Hey, y'all, welcome to our Spiders Lead podcast for December. I am so fired up to have Omar Banks, the athletic director at Campbell University, here with us today. Just want to wish you all happy holidays. I hope y'all are enjoying a little bit of return to sports for us right now. We got basketball teams in session and going, and we're looking forward to our spring sports as well. So hopefully y'all have been able to catch those, and I cannot wait for y'all to hear from today's guest. Omar Banks earned his undergraduate degree in business administration from Richmond, so one of our own, and then he earned a master's degree at both North Carolina Central University and VCU. He was a member of our football team while he was here, and he participated in the NCAA's Leadership Institute, which is just a phenomenal opportunity for those of our young student athletes that have gotten to go to that. It's just an incredibly great event that the NCAA puts on. Before he became the AD at Campbell, Omar has been everywhere. He's had stops at NC State, VCU, the University of Cincinnati, and Virginia Tech. He also spent some time in corporate America as well. I think one of the really unique things about him and why I was so fired up to have him on our podcast is just the upward trend in mobility. Everywhere he's gone, he's seemed to get better and get promoted and get to take that next step. And when you talk about really successful individuals, I think that's exactly what you're looking for. So very impressive guy. And I know he's super busy with his season. So we're really grateful to have him on. He's in his second year now, which I'm sure is extra interesting going through COVID, only being there a year with all that you have to do with that. But for those of you that don't know, Campbell University has 21 Division I varsity programs and about 500 student athletes. So he is a busy man, and I am super grateful for him to be here today. So my favorite question to start with is I just want to first and foremost welcome you, and then just want you to tell us a little bit more about who you are and what we might not know just from kind of reading your resume, how we can really learn about you.
Well, Lauren, first of all, thank you very much for having me on. This is an honor and a pleasure to be able to address the groups that will be watching this. I consider myself very blessed and privileged to be where I'm at and having gotten my education at the University of Richmond. So with that said, I mean, we can go all the way back. I think one of the unique things about me that people really don't know is that my dad was in the military, and I actually had the opportunity to grow up in Panama.
Wow.
And so from ages 3 to about 7, I was there in Central America, growing up on a military base where the temperature never dropped below 68 degrees. So I remember Christmases where it'd be 75 degrees and I have a brand new bike and all I do is ride the bike all day. So I think that's where I got my leg strength from, riding bikes, and that's where I got pretty fast.
Love it.
I was a defensive back on the football team here. I ended up really discovering, my love for football once we moved back to the United States and had the opportunity to play rec league ball. And again, I wasn't saying I was the best athlete, but I knew I was fast and I knew that I was smart. And so everything kind of came together, and I ended up getting a scholarship to the University of Richmond. And I would say the rest is history, but that's like a 20-year history. So I'll stop right there.
I love that. I think that's great. And you've definitely, you've had so much success from playing your sport to everything professionally. And I think just such a unique background of growing up on a military base. What are those kind of leadership skills that you feel like you got while you were at UR that's really helped you get to where you are now?
I think you never really appreciate the experience when you're going through it as a student athlete. Everybody always says that it goes quick. You know what? You'll understand when you get older. And, I was no different. But the things that student athletes have to do basically every single day, they have to learn how to, they have to learn teamwork, how to trust others. If you're on a team sport, you got to trust that, this linebacker is going to pick up his assignment so you can do your job. Those are the things that I think have really helped me, dealing with adversity, especially during a time with COVID-19, getting injured. I remember I broke my leg, the 9th game of my senior year at James Madison. So you talk about adversity. I wasn't able to finish my season, but it was one of those things where, you live and you learn and you go through it. time management. That's something that I think we're all dealing with right now with COVID. And, I've been on 5 Zooms between now and this one. So it's just amazing, how you manage your time and how you can go back and look at developing your class schedule and moving things around in order to make it work. It all ties together. And, I do think a big thing for me also is how to think strategically, because you want to not necessarily do everything the way it's always been done, but you always want to try to challenge the status quo, ask questions. You know, Nothing we do right now is quote unquote normal. I think, when we pivoted with COVID back in February, March, I think there was a lot of consternation, not just in college athletics, but in businesses and in companies around the world that how are we going to work? How are we going to, do these jobs? And I think people have learned that you can actually work remotely and be more productive. There is technology that will allow us to talk to each other, but the human element, because we are relational, is something that, we still long for. And I totally get it. And that's why I'm glad that we're able to play sports right now. But I think all of those things, lend itself to my experience at UR that really helped me, that I continue to use to this day.
I love that so much. That adaptability piece that you mentioned there at the end is just, it's so huge. And I don't think anyone realized how adaptable they were until
Right.
COVID hits. But it's one of those underdeveloped skills in most people, right? Like we,
Right.
especially as former student athletes or as current student athletes, we get so used to routine and like repetition over and over again. And there's this adaptability that's needed right now that is just very unique, like never before.
Right. Very, very,
So,
very true. And I
yeah.
think, I go back and I think about, just my experiences. When we talk about adaptability, one of the things that I had to learn was how to be adaptable. During my time when I played football at UR, on the defensive side of the ball, I had 3 different defensive coordinators in my 4 years. And so you have to adjust and adapt to different schemes and learn and do all that while you're balancing your schoolwork. And juxtapose that, when I was at the University of Cincinnati, I had 3 different athletic directors, 3 different university presidents in my time there. So when you talk about being adaptable and having to learn, it's really a skill that I think, everyone should really work on developing. And there's a lot of other things too, but adaptability, in a pandemic, it's there, it's real.
Wow, that's an incredible story. Gee, you got 3 different bosses as an athlete and 3 different bosses
Right.
times 2 as a professional, and that is something that's going to make an impact forever. That's going to make that long-term difference. I love that so much. I want to take that further, because I think we talked about adaptability. Are there other skills that you feel like in today's world you've done? The NCAA Leadership Institute, you've been a leader at all these different places. You are a leader of an entire, very large organization now. What is that skill or skills that you feel like is still kind of missing in today's society in terms of leadership?
Yeah. I think one thing that I'm finding, that I think is very key, and I look for this as a leader, and I'm just going to say it, and I'll try to unpack it, but connecting the dots, that's what I call it. So if you think about a problem, a lot of times, and I'm not going to use a lot of sports analogies, but a lot of times, if you're a quarterback and you're walking up to the line and you see something you don't like, you call an audible.
Right.
You look at it, you recognize it, you connect the dots, you see a problem, you try to fix the problem. And again, that correlates over into, the things that we have to do, whether it's in corporate America or whether it's in college athletics. We have to be able to connect the dots. And another way to say that is, be a problem solver.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people will bring you the issue and expect you to solve it just because you're the leader. But part of my job is to coach people, to get them to see, hey, you see this every day. I can recognize the problem, but give me 2 or 3 solutions in order to get it fixed. Or what would you recommend we do? But that's a big one that I found. If you can solve problems, it helps you move forward in your career. That's a big one.
I love that. And the empowerment that you're giving to your
Yes.
staff, you know, as problem solvers.
And that's the big thing, is really trying to encourage the staff and give them the confidence to do those things. Because, if I didn't do that throughout my career, I wouldn't be an athletic director. I think I became a really good problem solver as a financial person, because 90% of the issues are financial in nature, but I did a really good job of solving the problems. And that's what allowed me to continue to be promoted. But I also helped in other areas, whether it was sports information or marketing, or, the business office, at IBM and HR, stuff like that. But connecting the dots is the better way of saying it to me. Connecting the dots.
I love it. We're going to put dot connector as a key skill for spring semester for our student athletes. I love that. I love that. And, the other point you talked about, like learning all the different parts of the athletic department, right? I think if you're going to be that person that connects the dots, you need to be able to understand how people outside of you operate. So when you talked about, don't be comfortable with the status quo, like learning all of those different areas, I think that is such a great lesson for leaders. I love that. So
Absolutely. One of the biggest things that I try to combat against now is when somebody says, that's not my job, or that's not in my job description. So, they did that before the pandemic, but when you do it now, I just try to, gently nudge people and just say, you know what, pandemic's not in my job description either,
I
but
was just gonna say
we
that.
got to figure this out. So, yeah.
I love it. I keep telling my boss getting my nose swab is not part of my job description, but apparently it is. No, I love that. That's so true. And I think, we're all finding new parts of our job description right now more than more than ever before. So I want to get a little personal on you with this next question. I think people, they look at someone like you that's had all this great success and they just think, wow, like he's just got it all figured out. Like he's mastered it. He's done everything right. And I'm guessing, but I would assume, there's been some struggles and some adversity in there too. And so I want to ask you, what was one of the hardest kind of leadership lessons that you've learned that has gotten you kind of to where you are now?
Yeah. If I have it all figured out, I got everybody fooled. I say there's been a lot of lessons that I've learned along the way, and I've been fortunate to have some really good mentors that have helped me, mentors and advocates that have helped me along the way. Um, what I'll say is very simple, but it's profound for me. And like I said, I'll unpack it a little bit, but
Yeah.
never take too much of the credit when something goes right, and never take too much of the blame when things go wrong. And it's easy for someone to say, I fixed this problem, or I did this, or I did that. But chances are there's some other people in the background that have helped fix whatever the issue is. Um, you might have provided information, but somebody had to make a decision. Even if you provided an opinion, chances are someone else had to execute on that. And so if you put yourself out there too far, it's one of those things where you can get burned.
Yeah.
Because when it goes wrong, most people want the glory, but you don't want to get burned when it comes back around because you did something wrong. And so it's just simple, but it's profound to me. And I've always found that in working together with others, I'm not a big ego guy, and I don't try to take credit for a lot of stuff that happens. I know we actually just played a 4-game football season. We were one of 15 FCS schools that actually
Oh, that's
played
right. Yeah.
this fall, and we went through a testing, for COVID, and we had to play up against Sunbelt and ACC schools. So they had more stringent protocols than we did.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, making the decision to play, wasn't an easy one. But everybody wanted to give me the credit for doing it. And I just said, that's not me. I said, the president was involved, the players were involved. All I did was help facilitate it and make sure that we had tests in place. But the trainers are the ones that administered the test. So this wasn't me. And again, we pulled it off. We went through 5 weeks, over 1,600 tests for over 120 people, 0 positives.
Wow.
And they used 3 different companies. And when we played Wake Forest this year, we actually they sent their company to us to test. And that's when everybody kind of got nervous saying, oh
Yeah.
boy, these other two companies, what if there were some false positives?
Yeah.
It came through. And again, that's a testament to the leadership of everyone that pulled
Yeah.
together that wanted to make the season happen. And so, like I said, never take too much of the credit when it goes right, and never take too much of the blame when it goes wrong.
I love that. My husband's got me reading Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, which really hits on you better not have an ego or you're not going to get too far in life. So it's a perfect example to what you were just saying, and the teamwork and the commitment to the bigger picture, right? Like, I think the fact that everybody riled together and you weren't, they didn't have any positives, like they obviously had to make a lot of sacrifices to stay
Right.
that safe. And so I think that combination is just really special. You can't really have an ego in this pandemic, I've learned, even if you do have one, because you're going to get checked real quick.
You are so right. You are so right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. Well, I have one more question for you, because I think that, you've continued to grow as a leader, right? Like from your young days at the military academy or at the military base riding bikes to Richmond to where you are now. How do you, or what do you do to continue to kind of grow and develop as a leader?
One of the biggest things that I do is I study and I read. I should say read and study in that order, because this is I'm one class away from finishing my doctorate, so I've been working on that now for about years, and it lends itself very well to pulling out leadership books, reading and tying it into my dissertation and how all of that works together, and then getting the job at Campbell is one of those things where you're putting it all into practice as a new leader, but then nobody has a manual on pandemic management, right? So I just continue to try to do that. I've been very fortunate to have some really good mentors and advocates as well that I can reach out to. But again, I think a lot of leaders have actually pulled together, especially in athletics, to just communicate and get best practices. What are you doing? Because again, it's all new, and everybody is making it up as we go along. And that's been key, I would say, at least for me, over the last year.
I love that. Well, congrats first on almost finishing your doctorate. That's big time. I know somebody at Richmond's listening to this and cheering about you talking about reading and studying and still being in school. So, so your an advisor for sure is excited.
I was going to say the real reason I do it is because it gives me a good excuse to tell my kids, if I do it, you do it too. So
true. I love that. I love that. And I loved what you said about, asking the questions and coming together as a community. Because I think as a leader, we talk a lot in our leadership institute about there's this isolation when you get to the top, right? Of like, everyone's counting on you and you're dealing with all these problems. They can be lonely up there. And so having that community of support, and you have to really create it and reach out and ask the questions. I love what you said about that.
Yes, and it's very true, because we're all the sum of our experiences, and I know that I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for some really good advice from some really good mentors along the way, who continue to advise me and give me great ideas and advice in order to continue to progress.
I love that so much. So, well, I want to wrap up here in a second. Do you have any last words of advice or insight you would like to share with our student athletes or community before I wrap it up?
Yeah, and like I said earlier, you probably don't grasp the gravity of the experience that you're in right now, but everyone is going to learn something out of this pandemic. But the biggest thing that I will, encourage the student athletes to continue to do is network. There's a lot of good people out there, and we have some good networks within UR that we look for our own. I have I have 4 people that graduated from Richmond on my staff: 2 basketball coaches, me, and my men's tennis coach. And we talk all the time. It's great. And so at the end of the day, individuals can help you navigate, whether it's a job opportunity, whether the job is, a job in athletics, or it's entrepreneurial and you want to start something on your own. Networking and finding people that can help you is going to be key. And I think the other thing is, I'd say, whatever you do, do it well. You're going to get noticed. I always say when people ask me, how do I get a job in athletics? I always tell them, or how do I move up in athletics? I'm sorry. I tell them to do your job well, and your next job will find you. And I think that's been true. It's been true for me. I think the only job that I actually applied for was the first one at Hampton and the last one here at Campbell. But all the other experiences that I had, it was one of those things where somebody found me, called me, recruited me. And I think I turned out okay.
I think you're doing pretty well. So for yourself, I would say I love that networking piece, and the UR network we talk about all the time is just like unlike any other. The type of person that comes to Richmond to play a sport and get a degree is just a very, very unique human being. So I think that network, clearly from the example you just gave with all your staff you hired, is serving people well. So to all my student athletes, keep being nice to these people you're around, because it's gonna pay off tenfold in the rest.
It'll pay off. It'll pay off.
I love that so much. Well, we are all about talking about our future self we want to be. So I'm going to say thank you to the almost Dr. Omar Banks. Put that doctor in there, because I know it's coming soon.
I'll take it.
I'll be the first one to recognize it publicly. But so grateful to you for joining us today. I know it's busy and a crazy time of year. And thank you all so much for listening today. Happy holidays, stay safe, and keep tuning into those basketball teams, and we'll have some more sports coming for you this spring. So thank you all so much. Have a great holiday.
Happy holidays.